Okay, good morning, everyone. We have a lot to cover today, so let's gather. We're going to open our time in prayer. Join me. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together, whether sitting in this room or engaging from home. Help us to see everyone, our family, our friends, the neighbors we know, and the neighbors we don't know, as your beloved children. Give us courage and grace as we risk hurt feelings and disagreements, all in an effort to understand each other better. Remind us to be your hands and feet in the world as we try to see no stranger. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Thanks, Stephanie. Good morning. For those of you who've been with us the past few weeks, for those who came to the workshop or lecture, you know we've been talking about this message of seeing no stranger, what Valarie Kaur shared as far as her book, and this concept of revolutionary love. Today will be sort of a recap, but really more a way that we can talk about how this narrative is being lived out in our own faith and in our own church from three folks who know it well and are feet on the ground out there doing some incredible things. The sermon this morning, Rebecca touched on this same notion of Jesus calling us to love each other, to recognize that perfect faith is not perfect faith if it's exclusive of other people. So this morning you all have this compass in front of you. I encourage you to look at it through the lens of our own Christian walk, of the call that Jesus has given us to love our neighbors as ourselves, to love without judgment, to invite those who are on the corners, in the darkness, wounded, hurting, in the fringes, bringing them in, sitting down with them, breaking bread with them, showing them hospitality and love, and seeing the wound in them and trying to understand it. Creating a beloved community in this church, outside of this church, in our nation, in our world, is about listening to each other, first and foremost. Choosing to see ourselves in one another's stories. One question that was asked several times during Valarie Kaur's time with us was, who do you want to be in the story? And I think that's such an important question for all of us to wrestle with and think about. Remember that circumstances determine who gets to be who on any given day. Remember that love it's available to all of us, no matter who we are. Jesus extends love and a call to be in community and faith with him to everybody. It's a bridge to a beloved community. So I ask all of us to recall that deep solidarity is rooted in love and recognize that our community, this church, the community outside of us, is only as strong as our ability to love one another. So with that, thank you, Sam Henderson and Lane Henderson, for this great question to lead us in today. What kinds of encouragement, support, and resourcing might come from our faith community here at Trinity? And so with that, I'm turning it over to Kristen, Hunter, Ann Blitch, and Paige Keller to share. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Libby, for setting this up. I'm Kristen Hunter, and I'm a member of the Faith in Action Committee here at Trinity. And I am also an English teacher. Been teaching English at Westminster right down the road for 29 years. And so it will not surprise you that stories are at the heart of how I understand my work, my faith, my experiences in the world. And one of the quotes from Kaur's book that resonates with me is this idea that she says about social change is only possible when communities are able to mobilize and tell stories that reclaim our imagination. And I read her book years ago, and it's one thing that I have been thinking about in terms of my current life, what's going to come after my work in a school, which hopefully is not too far away, And when I joined Faith in Action, I was very anxious to think about what's going to be my work out in the world. And so I began to hear about this day that Trinity put on, which is at the Metro Reentry Facility, and it is a day that we put on, really a day of recreation, having lunch, serving a lot of popcorn, which was my job yesterday. And this facility houses incarcerated folks who have about 2 years or less of their sentence. And when I first heard about it, I wasn't sure why I was so drawn to it. I recently had somebody tell me, because I'm thinking about my career after teaching at Westminster, pay attention to where your energy is drawn. Like, you're not always going to understand it. And so when I first heard about the event at Metro Reentry, I think I was on session and somebody mentioned it, I really knew nothing about it. And so I got my husband Bob to join me, and we went 4 years ago. And so I've done this event for 4 years. And I didn't really know what we were getting into. We showed up, met some folks, and I want to mention this one individual who I have spoken to every time I have gone. And it gets to this question of stories. So when you go, you are watching someone who has been incarcerated for either a short time or a long time, and they're seeing their family. It's a very moving event, and I kind of felt like I just needed to stay out of the way. This is their day. But this one gentleman by the name of Nathan, we struck up a conversation. He has been in prison. I saw him yesterday. So he's been in prison for 40 years. And he began to talk to me the first time I went, and he was asking me questions. He has a very sort of warm disposition, very respectful, very thoughtful, and he just started asking me what I do. And I told him that I was a teacher, and I teach English. He asked me what books we were reading. He said, I've heard lately that sometimes there's clashes about what students should read, and we just had this really interesting conversation. Every year I go, I see him, and he remembers our conversation from a year ago, and I'm always amazed. And yesterday, I was sort of hoping I might not see him because he has come up for parole a number of times. And my husband Bob and I were talking to him, and Bob couldn't go last year. 2 years ago, Bob was doing the best he could with the cotton candy machine. And, and Nathan saw us. All we did was say hello, and he looked at me, he goes, how's the teaching going? And he looked at Bob, and he said, you're the cotton candy guy. And it made me think, like, I wonder, does he sort of manage his time in prison by sharpening his mind? I mean, because it was just so remarkable to me. And so before I left yesterday, touch base. I'm always hoping perhaps we could have some correspondence. And so this idea of stories, being engaged with people, as Libby mentioned, who perhaps, they're living not far away from us, and yet their lives are so very different from ours. That leads me to, so because of my work at Metro Reentry, I began talking to people, and things would come up about what's going on in local prisons in terms of education. And I have a good friend by the name of Margaret Baldwin. She teaches at Kennesaw. She is a playwright. She's actually been to Trinity to speak about theater. But she and her husband, Paul, are very involved with Common Good Atlanta. And they teach courses in prisons, and I was just going to tell you a little bit about it. It's been in existence for about 17 years, and their statement reads, Common Good Atlanta provides people who are incarcerated or formerly incarcerated with access to higher education by connecting Georgia's colleges and professors with Georgia's prison classrooms. And they teach courses such as globalism and identity, nonviolent political theory, Shakespeare and law, literature and exile, a book on the Brothers Karamazov, world literature, neuroscience. And so folks who are incarcerated can apply to this program. It's taught by professors at Emory, Morehouse, Kennesaw. So I went through the training, and I've been working in the Writing Center at a local facility on Ponce, again, for folks who are nearing the end of their sentence. And it's so fascinating. Last Sunday, I walk in, and so these are men who are working on papers, they're working on writing, and Margaret encourages me to just sort of walk in, offer myself. Some of them don't really talk to me so much, but others immediately strike up conversation. And last week, and I'm never sure what exactly they're going to be working on, but last week they had read Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail, and which is a stunning piece of writing. It was when King was in prison in Birmingham. He gathered together several pieces of paper, and he responded to some ministers who were encouraging him and his folks to be patient. And Dr. King was explaining in a 6-page letter that is just a remarkable piece of rhetoric about why it was not time to slow down. And he explained through theology, history, personal experience, the rationale for why it was not time to slow down. So that is what the students had read, what they were thinking about. It's the exact same thing my seniors at Westminster had read that same week. I did not know that that was the case. And it was one of those moments, again, energy. It's like something's going on here. And my students at Westminster had had such thoughtful conversations about this piece of writing. And not everybody agreeing all the time. That's never what I asked for in my classroom. And we had a really thoughtful conversation. And then for me to walk into a prison facility and look at a young man, he appears to be, I've seen him every time I've gone. He is always super curious. He's always trying to figure out how to make his writing better. And he had a conversation, he asked me several questions like, what do you think I should write about this? I mean, and it was this remarkable sort of synchronicity of where I'm talking to a young man, and I'm very much let him lead the conversation. But he was really working hard to understand everything King was saying, and Margaret was having them write a dialogue of like themselves and their experience with the person that they are reading. And so in those moments, there's a sense that I have an opportunity to be curious about this person's story, and that's really how I've operated always in my own classroom. I have had students over my 30 years where I just cannot figure out how to help a student, and as soon as I get curious instead of like insistent, total game changer. And so similarly with my experience working in the prisons, getting to see Nathan, that's really where Faith in Action has been so meaningful to me, and where I'm so excited about the future and the opportunities. And so when Kaur's talking about stories, that's how it resonates really with my experience. And so this week, I had a great time talking with Anna Page about how to share some of our work with Faith in Action. So I'm going to turn it over. Who's next? Paige? Okay.
Okay, so I don't know how the preschool teacher got put between the the high school English teacher and the lawyer, but I did. So I'm going to try to kind of jump off of what they're saying. But so I joined Faith in Action kind of near the beginning of it, while we were starting to figure out what do we want to do. We knew we all wanted to be involved and continue the legacy of Trinity. Of being out in the world and being the hands and feet of Jesus, and how we can do that. And so we kind of were trying to figure out how that was. We didn't even have a name yet. we finally were like, faith in action. And we were like, that's perfect. That's what we want to do. So I'm going to start by sharing a story, kind of jumping off of Kristen, on something that was meaningful to me and how we kind of have come up with different things that we have done with Faith in Action. And then I'm going to give y'all a little bit more nitty-gritty on the committees and how Faith in Action, where it falls in the committee structure of the church. So a group of us had done Metro Reentry. We had gone to Montgomery. We spent a weekend there, a group of us. Some people here are part of that group, and we spent a weekend going to the Legacy Museum. And we started thinking about second chance and what that looks like and how we can make the world a better place, and not kind of jumping off of Brian Stevenson. How can we not let the worst thing you've done define you? So a group of us went to St. Luke's church downtown, and we heard about these record restrictions. And we had somebody from the Solicitor General's office come and someone from the DA's office come. And they talked to us about this, and we were all like, wow, could Trinity do this? And we were like, oh, I don't know. That sounds like a pretty big thing. But they started saying, what you need space. Trinity has space. I mean, we were at the event yesterday, somebody was talking, Trinity has the most gorgeous campus. And we were like, yeah, it does. We really do have beautiful campus. We have tons of space. It's easy to park. We're on a bus line. We're like, this defines what we have here at Trinity. So we came back, and Rebecca and Lucy said, yes, I think that sounds like a good idea. And so we started with the DA's office, and it was amazing. I mean, to just describe that day, this whole room was filled with computers and people, and the sanctuary was full of people who had records, and they had done their time, they had finished their sentence, they had done their probation. And these were not, like what they say, the deadly seven. This is not people who've murdered or people who have had sexual crimes. These are people who, a lot of them, drug offenses, shoplifting, and a lot of them may have happened when they were 19 years old. Had it been you or me or one of our children, we would have hired a lawyer and probably gotten off and not even had to go to jail. But a lot of these people did have to go to jail because of, I love the way you said that, the circumstances of how they were, of their background, just the circumstances of where they were born. And so anyway, the room was full of people, and then we had Georgia Justice Project, and then we had a job fair. And so people came in, and these are people who had restrictions on they still had this conviction on their record. So you can get it, it's a law that you can get it restricted in most states in the United States, or in many states in the United States. It just automatically comes off your record. However, in the state of Georgia, you have to go through a process to get it taken off your record. Most people don't know this unless they have a really high-powered lawyer who knows it. Okay, now is the time we can get this off your record. So these people, some of them, I mean, you would see like 60-year-old, 70-year-old grandmothers coming in to get their record restricted for something they did or maybe not even didn't do when they were 19 years old. And they can't get a job, they can't get housing because it keeps coming up on their record checks. And so, and it's something that should just not be there. And so they come in and they can get their record restricted. And the great thing about it was that a lot of the people, if there was anything wrong, like something that wasn't clear cut, that they could just get it off their record. Sometimes people had records they didn't even know about that were in the system. And so we partnered with Georgia Justice Project in order to have that, have them be the lawyer to talk with them. And we had many lawyers from Trinity who are also trained that could help them work through whatever that issue was. And kind of because the DA's office and the Solicitor General's office can't give that kind of lawyer advice. And then we had a job fair that many of us put on, and it was really exciting because it was people who would hire people and give them a second chance and say, you know what, we know you have a record, but that's okay. We want to hire you. We believe in second chances. And so that was just an amazing event that we've been able to hold here at Trinity, and mainly just because we have such great space and we can share it. It really, when it comes to financial cost, it's not very high on us. It's just manpower and having this beautiful church. So that's one thing that's really been important to me. You see these people that walk out with just with huge smiles on their faces, like, wow, finally I'm free and I can get a job. I can be more productive in society. So I want to talk a little bit about where Faith in Action falls. So we have the Mission Council, and the Mission Council we have local partners, and we have impact grants we provide, and we have global partners in Haiti and Cuba, and you've probably heard about a lot of those. We're very active in the community and in Atlanta, but we also have Faith in Action, and Faith in Action falls under the Mission Council. And then I think Ann's going to talk to you a little bit about more what Faith in Action does.
Actually, so where I started with Faith in Action was with the Georgia Justice Project, and I love how beautifully Paige just described what we do with our second chance work around here. But I currently serve on the board, and I've been an active volunteer there, so that was a nice segue for me into the Faith in Action Committee. But I want to talk to you about, because Kristen had mentioned Valarie Kaur's book, Seeing No Stranger. She also wrote Sage Warrior, and there's a podcast about that that's really strong. And I think that describes nicely our Faith in Action Committee. Sage meaning wisdom, and warrior meaning action. So we're all about learning about issues that are affecting people. What are the root causes of people's suffering? And then educating others in the church and our friends and so forth about those issues. And then action is going down to the Capitol and trying to change policy, or writing to our legislators and trying to change some of the root causes. But it's not, it's funny because I am a lawyer and I do advocate for my clients, and I feel comfortable doing that. I did not want to go to the Capitol. It just wasn't my thing. I'm not a grab the bullhorn, run around and protest. I am very much of a, mediator. Let's look at both sides and figure out what the practical solutions are here. That is exactly what happens at the Capitol. So to my surprise, when I did go with Lucy Crosswell and others with the Georgia Water Coalition, not knowing anything about environmental issues, they basically advocate for 2 or 3 policy changes, law changes, and they make sense. So there was a mining issue with the Okefenokee, and it was a mining company that wanted to come in and immediately start their work. Well, there are ramifications there that nobody really understands yet. So the Georgia Water Coalition was simply advocating for, hey, let's take some time. Let's put a moratorium on this. Not, we're anti-business, no mining, can come in here. It was just, let's take some time to understand, because once we start that work, we don't actually know what the long-term impact is. So that's a good example of where you go down to the Capitol totally backed by the Georgia Water Coalition. We're not just out there on our own. And we're just talking to our own representatives and our own senators. And if they're on kind of the side of, oh yeah, we need to protect our resources, then the great thing about that is you can talk to them about what are some of the concerns that you're hearing from those who are focused more on the, let's get the miners in here, like let's promote business. And you can kind of, because the Georgia Water Coalition has taught you so much, you can answer, you can say, well, actually, we're just looking at the long term. You can talk to your cohorts about how if we start rushing into this mining action, we actually don't know. And then also, there's a lot of talk about locals being hired, but the actual facts are that they're bringing in people from outside of Georgia. So, because these have to be experts. And in this little town, there are no experts, right? So, yeah, maybe a few locals will be hired, but not like what they're telling you. So it's a very, first of all, it's really nice because you go down to the Capitol and democracy is actually at play. Like it's working. I know we all worry about the federal level stuff, but in the Georgia State Capitol, people are talking to each other. People are getting things done. Maybe not everything that we want or whichever side wants, whatever, but people, it's happening. And so that's actually just really nice to see, right? But another example of what we advocate for, so that's the creation care part of our work. And then you've heard about the second chance part of our work. Gun safety. So I think, when Paige and others were starting this committee, that was one of the big issues. And, it's educating and learning about what are the organizations out there, what fits the Trinity mold, right? I mean, yeah, there's this huge spectrum of political views. I think most of us fit, kind of in here somewhere, whichever way we lean. And so that's what they discovered, like the Georgia majority for gun safety. It's right in here. It advocates not for taking everybody's guns away, but for safety. So how many kids are, getting access to their guns, to their parents' guns at home because they're unlocked? So kids with suicidal thoughts and homicidal thoughts, they have access to these guns at home. So the Georgia majority for gun safety, and we back that very heavily with TDPO and others leading that charge, they advocate for gun locks. Just gun locks. That's it. So it's, and education. Cindy was just reminding me last night. It's also just educating people about like how many people are dying because they have free access to guns, and how many people could we prevent from dying by, advocating for, mandating gun locks. And it's all about, it's going back to that sage warrior, right? Like we're not out there just advocating for crazy extreme things. We're really finding partners who fit, who are working on practical solutions and fit where we are as a church. And then the action is, again, it's education, about like with others that maybe don't know about these issues, and it's educating legislators by writing letters, by making phone calls, by going down there and speaking with them directly. And it's just it's a way that anybody who questions what can they do today, the federal stuff is not what we do. I mean, yes, it affects us. Actually, I was reading in the AJC this morning, Michael Thurman has thrown his hat in the ring for governor, and I think he said it really well. Yeah, there's a lot going on at the federal level. What really matters is how we react here in Georgia. So if they cut Medicaid, what are we going to do here to, take care of our people? And I think that's what we're doing on this committee. There's a lot going on the federal level, and we can't really address all of that. That seems really overwhelming. But what we can do is take care of Georgians, our neighbors, the people we don't know who are suffering in many, many ways. So the four pillars that we support are creation care, second chance, gun safety, and then the fourth pillar is actually kind of ongoing but growing, and that is housing and health care. And a lot of people have supported Presbyterians for a Better Georgia, and actually Rebecca is on that board, but in a way that wasn't the focus of our efforts, but we were kind of tagging along with them and going down to the Capitol and learning about issues. And one of the policies that we advocated for last year was there are so many boarded up homes in downtown Atlanta and the surrounding areas because they're owned by institutional investors that are outside of the state. And so we were trying to chip away at that and say, okay, if you've owned it for X number of years, maybe that's not a good thing for the city. And I think where we ended up was a bill that said if you own more than 500 units in Atlanta, then you can't buy another buy anything else. But it didn't pass. So it's just we're up against a very pro-business, and it's good for the state to be pro-business. But it's just chipping away. So Presbyterians for a Better Georgia has some good ideas. They're just trying to chip away at the whole affordable housing, lack of affordable housing issue. But we're growing that work on our committee. So Shannon Sale is an executive at Grady Hospital, which most of you know, and she and I are starting this new subcommittee, and our first meeting is Thursday night at 6. Yes, look at Lucy. 6 o'clock. Wednesday. Sorry. My head is, okay. Yes, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, yes. So we will be talking about different ways to support with boots on the ground. So we're doing the advocacy piece. We're continuing with that work. But we're also looking at ways to support people who are leaving the hospital or medical treatment, and they use these housing vouchers to go into a home, an apartment, and then they need help. And so much like the work we do around refugees, where we, show up with housing stuff, right? Like mops and paper towels and food and that kind of thing, we're going to be looking at doing that through Partners for Home, which that they're very active already there. So I think that's going to be a really good way for our congregation to lean in. So yeah, I'm talking way too much. But yeah. So anyway, just thanks for this opportunity for us to share what we do on Faith in Action and how it fits with what we're talking about this morning with Valarie Kaur.
Do folks have questions? I'm sure. Does anyone have any questions about any of this? George.
This is a question for Kristen. I was interested in what you said about Common Good Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And my question is that an official ministry of Faith in Action? If it's not, should it be? And would you like to recruit more of us to work with you in that?
No, it's not. It's something that I have pursued on my own, but I have started. I totally see about it. And one thing I really appreciate is that the committee works to be very intentional, so that we just don't take on, everything. But I have Margaret is my friend that got me into this. She and her husband is on the board. They have spoken to me about would there be interest in our supporting Common Good Atlanta, and so that conversation has begun. And so I would be happy to really support that effort, and because it's such a meaningful local organization. So, thanks. Other questions?
So I'm just going to kind of close this up here a little bit with thoughts on maybe what steps, and this, I just put this out to you to contemplate. If you want to share something on your heart today, we'd love to hear it. But what steps are we as individuals willing to take in the next few weeks? I mean, why wait, right? To show this concept of revolutionary love from our own faith perspective through the message of what Valarie Kaur shared towards others, both in our circle and our community. Whose story might we hear or learn more about? What wound might we acknowledge in ourselves or in a group from whom we're feeling estranged? What's one way we can be present with an individual or a group that's in pain, grief or suffering that they're currently experiencing? How might this compass we have in front of us help? Anyone have any thoughts they want to share on any aspect of this? Through anything you've been contemplating? Yes, Judy.
Thank you, Kristen, because I think the storytelling as it's written, those of us that did the workshop on Friday wrote our stories and we shared them. And that's the action of the power of a story. And we all felt our individual, these are my table mates right here. We are now cohorts. But I think that they're really, I also happen to be in a group here at Trinity that you all do get notice of called Writing as a Spiritual Practice. And we meet the first and third Thursday mornings from 10 to 11:30. And we are using prompts to share our stories. And we feel exceptionally close. Just as Dee Dee and Larry and I weren't necessarily soul people. And now we have a welcome from each other that didn't exist before. So I'm very strongly advocating that we come up with a way for whoever, in probably a format somewhat the way it was presented by Valarie, where you have some presentation of who were you, who are you, and where are you going? So I advocate for that.
I agree. I think a lot of times, we get so busy in our lives, we don't think about our story, where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And to sort of lean back into that, one of the things she asked us to do was to take the compass and choose a place on it where a word or a place where we kind of felt like we are right now, to take it. But it was more than that. It was, where have you been? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? And she also used a story of sort of the origin of the Sikh faith to talk about all these different people in the story, protesters and prisoners and leaders and children and all kinds of different people, and sort of asked us to place ourselves within the story. But I thought it was so interesting because, as it turned out, the group, probably 35, 40 of us, something like that, the words that ended up coming out that people sat around the tables to talk about were wonder, grief, listen, breathe and push, and tend the wound. Am I missing one? Was there maybe wisdom too? But so we ended up kind of breaking up in these groups. And I was at the wonder table. And George was at that table with me. And one of the things we pulled out was that wonder is both awe of the world around us and creation, but also just the act of wondering about another person, of asking why and being curious. And I love that. I keep thinking about that now because it's this two-part word that we keep with us, that's both. And I don't want to make that your word, but that's one I'm taking with me as I walk around right now, because I feel like that's where I am. being in wonder and awe of this beautiful world as it changes with the season, but also wondering about the people I meet, about what their stories are, because as Paige and Anne and Kristen shared, it's through that wonder and curiosity that we connect with other people. So thank you all so much. Thanks, everybody. If anybody else have any thoughts they want to share before we close up, yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. Forrest and I had the privilege of attending a fundraiser last week for City of Refuge. And I don't know how many of you are familiar. I was kind of surprised. It was the first time we had ever been. I'd been there with my daughter and seen the amazing work that they do. But it was the first time I had been to their fundraiser. And you talk about the work of loving the stranger. They're and taking care of them, all aspects of them, through job training, educating the children, providing a safe home for them, building affordable housing for them. And there's so much great work going on in the city, but I would, commend Trinity to take a look at the work that they're doing and not, just participate in that because it's life-changing. We heard two horrible stories, a young girl who had been trafficked, and a man who had lost two sons within 30 days of suicide and took to, alcohol and drugs. And they both turned their lives around, and the young girl is a manager at a Chick-fil-A, and the manager came out to talk about her and what impact she has on others that not only that come in as customers, but also work with her. And, that, talk about stories and impactful. I just really, if you don't know much about the City of Refuge, I encourage you to learn, go visit, take a tour. They're doing amazing work.
So I'll just, thank you so much for mentioning that, Mary Kelly. I just want to echo that, because that's one of the reasons I'm so interested in affordable housing that's one of the reasons I'm interested, it's blinking. That's okay, I'll just talk very loudly. But City of Refuge is also part of my past, and what Peachtree Road Methodist is doing with them is really incredible, and I hope that we can, as part of our Housing and Healthcare Committee, lean in with them, just like we've done with our Second Chance work. They started going down to Metro Reentry Facility, which Kristen so beautifully described. We tagged along with them, so it was a great way to get into that work. Same with City of Refuge. So Peachtree Road Methodist is building affordable housing right across the street from City of Refuge. It's out Joseph Boone Boulevard, so if you're at the Mercedes-Benz and you head out whatever direction that is, west, you eventually get to City of Refuge after you've passed through like the Vine City neighborhoods and so forth. And then, so they're building affordable housing for women who are coming out of City of Refuge, and it's the most incredible work. I mean, some of us have heard a little bit about it, but we want to lean in there, and so that's possibly another selfish plug for Wednesday night at 6, but that's a good thing to bring up.
I wanted to add another plug for Mission Council. So one of the ways that we work with organizations and support organizations is through an impact grant. And each year we have an impact grant cycle where organizations can write in and fill out an application, and then as a committee we decide where the money that Trinity has allocated for those impact grants, so it may be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, we're kind of deciding what the best parameter is. So if you do know organizations like City of Refuge that you think would benefit or that we need to know about, Common Good, please reach out to, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Lucy. and try to get them in that cycle, because Trinity is doing a lot of work out in the community as well, and we are trying to make sure that we are spreading that message to the congregation.
I hope a lot of you, I see a lot of you who were at Valerie's talk Friday night, or you've been in the class talking about this, and I hope you were impacted as much, or are being impacted as much as Lane and I have been. I'll say I'm going to extend an invitation. I've got a few sheets describing an invitation that's my personal response to Valerie's presence and her writing and so forth. And it doesn't replace any of the things we've heard, but it beautifully complements everything we've heard. And it's basically a project. I'm looking for 5 people at least who will join me for 5 weeks, 5 minutes a day, for 5 days a week. So, 25 minutes a week total, in praying for the people we've talked about, for the ministries that are going on in this church, the people we've heard about in prison ministry and so forth. There are a few quotes, people like Richard Rohr, who says, "Action and prayer were once thought of as mutually exclusive, but we have believed they must be brought together or neither one would make sense." Action and prayer. You've heard Pope Francis say, first you pray for people, then you feed them. That's how prayer works, right? But if you notice, he says, first you pray for people. And so this is just based on this kind of thing. I was impacted by Valerie's statement when she said her whole community decided to pray for a mass shooter that had killed a number of the sick community. And she says, our prayers and our forgiveness weren't a substitute for justice, but they energized us and empowered us as we pursued justice for everyone. So I'm just hoping I might have a few companions in this. I get so busy doing sometimes, I forget to pray, and I think in my case, my work is less impactful because I don't draw on the spiritual power that's there. So,
Thanks. Thank you all so much.